Hi, and thanks for clicking on Pain to Power, a call for HOA reform. If you're new to this platform, please check out my YouTube channel, Pain to Power _HOA reform. There are some introductory videos there that will give you a background as to why I created this platform, as well as this high-level overview of this Colorado homeowner story that I'm sharing in segments on my platform. Please also, if you're new to this platform, make sure to like and follow, as I will be releasing more segments of this homeowner story in the weeks and days to come. So let's just jump right into it. High level, part one of the interview went over the fact that this woman purchased a lot out in Grand Junction, unaware that her neighbors had formed an HOA while she was an owner, and then turned around and sued her for over $600,000 in legal fees and fines. And then all of these disturbing and alarming events started to occur and continue to this day, which leads us to part two of this story, where essentially an event occurred a few years after she purchased in July 8th, 2022, when the HOA Management Company showed up at her property unannounced, without notice, and ripped down her fencing without a court order. This was then followed up by the sheriff deputy arriving to the homeowner's property, not only supporting and reinforcing the position of the HOA Management Company and their right to rip down this fence, but then lets the homeowner know, by the way, your HOA that is newly formed owns a portion of your property. Why is it, or how is it, that an HOA Management Company, the sheriff deputy, and the HOA came to the position that they actually had an ownership in this woman's property? That is what we are going to focus on today, and once you get an idea of how that occurred, all the other events are going to kind of build on top of it. The best way, I think, to really kind of get everybody there is, I'm huge into timelines. Based on my 10-year battle with my HOA, I'm a huge timeline person. Plug everything into timelines, because the saying of the devil is in the details is 100% absolutely true. So with that being said, we're going to switch gears. We're going to kind of start to move through. I'm going to bring up a timeline. We're going to look at this timeline together, and I'll take you through it step by step. Then we'll move into showing more videos, talking about more events that occurred throughout the series and time frame of 2022, and then kind of wrap it up with some thoughts and opinions and analysis. So please, again, make sure you like and follow if you'd like to follow this homeowner story. It's really critical this story get out there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this timeline. So what you have in front of you is a timeline of events and details that I put together with the goal of providing some information so folks can really wrap their heads around why it is that all these different parties have opposite views around property ownership associated with this homeowner's property. If you look at 2001, the developer who created the subdivision went through the process of dissolving the CC&Rs with the Secretary of State, unfortunately, because he had to file bankruptcy. And as part of that, he handed over the management of the roads in the subdivision to the county. Then in 2006, the developer's neighbor, for purposes of the story, we'll call him Bob, approaches the developer and says, hey, I really would like you to agree to allow me to use your land to build a subdivision sign and maintain that sign. And so the builder agreed that that would be a good idea. And so what he put in place was an easement agreement. And so I have the easement agreement in front of me. I want to specifically read a few things that this builder put in this easement agreement. In the recitals area, he stated that he is the grantor and he is the owner of the parcel. The only thing that he granted permission to Bob for was the use of this easement, and he identified it to be roughly 206 square feet of his property. So he executes this easement agreement in 2006. It also runs with the land, and the terms of this easement agreement for both the builder and Bob will pass on to their successors, meaning that people that buy their properties or follow afterwards as owners, these rights will pass on to Bob's successors and the builder's successors. So what that means is in 2018, when this homeowner purchases the lot, she purchases the lot from the builder. She now becomes the new grantor associated with this easement agreement that simply lets her neighbor Bob use the easement again for specific purposes of maintaining or building the sign. Then, unbeknownst to this homeowner, her neighbors then start to create an HOA without her awareness or knowledge. And unbeknownst to her, May 20th, 2022, after Bob, who was the grantee of this easement, who could use this easement, moved to another state, Bob then puts in place an easement deed agreement with this newly formed HOA, again, unbeknownst to the homeowner. And I have this easement deed in front of me, so I'm going to read some of the language that Bob put in this easement deed with this newly formed HOA. What Bob states in this HOA easement deed is he hereby sells and conveys to this newly formed HOA all of the grantor's rights, title, and interest. Rights, title, and interest. This is very curious because based on the original easement agreement in 2006, there doesn't appear to be any agreement that Bob had any title rights or interest or ownership in this property. This is a critical event, and this is what folks need to focus on. Again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert in easements, but I'm just reading the plain language of these easement agreement and easement deed. If, indeed, Bob took an easement agreement in which the builder gave him permission to use his property and now turned it into a deed in which Bob granted property ownership rights to the new HOA in which he didn't have the right or legal authority to do, this is hugely problematic. And if that were indeed the case, then all the events that follow create additional issues associated with potentially this homeowner's rights and maybe even her civil rights. I don't know. This is all just stuff for folks to review the timeline. These are all public records. You can go and pull this information. But essentially where we're going to go now from here is we're going to start with looking at the events that occurred on July 8th. So now we're going to bring some pictures up, show the evidence of the HOA management company, what the fencing looked like once they took it down. As you can see on your screen, it looks like the fencing was taken down on quite a big portion of the homeowner's property, not just the corner of the property of 206 square feet, but rather a significant amount of her property. And we will now go into the audio and video of the sheriff deputy arriving on the scene with his assessment of this easement deed, his position on who owns the property, and then alerting the homeowner for the very first time that the HOA actually owns her property. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the audio and video.
2006 and recorded basically clerks and recorder's office on the 24th. And there's your reception number if you want to go down to the clerks and recorder's office and get a copy yourself or look into it further.
So are you saying they had a right to chop my fence down?
So what I'm saying is this is their easement.
No, it's not.
And so you don't have whatever's on that easement, they have right to alter or change.
No, they don't.
Okay, well that's the information that we have is the HOA was sold and deeded an easement, which is 36 feet from the arc back.
You were totally wrong.
Okay, and that's fine. You can believe that, but the information we have as far as anything
so
criminal is nothing
they can do
criminal
property damage
on their 36-foot back of easement.
No,
they own the property on there.
Let me show you something. Come over here, because I want you to think I steal, because I don't steal.
Okay.
So, this I've never seen.
Okay.
But where's in the private agreement?
So here's the easement that was granted on this date. This is the easement that was granted, and
where's the sales agreement? Show me the sales agreement.
I don't have the sales agreement. That's irrelevant. It's been filed with the clerks and recorder's office. This document.
No, sir.
So let me show you here.
No,
okay?
You're wrong.
So this was filed. This was filed and pulled from the clerks and recorder's office. Okay, here's the date and time that it was pulled. So May 20th. This was pulled from the clerks and recorder's office. That's this year, man. So that was just a couple months ago that they had this document.
They made this up.
Okay, they didn't make this up.
Yes,
okay?
they did.
If you feel like it did, here's the numbers. Like I said, take a picture of it. You're welcome to go down to clerks and recorder and get your own copy. But look, so they sell and convey an easement to Weddings Canyon Estates. Okay.
They just filed
and everything. No, this is everything here, right?
26.
So this is the.
They can't do this.
Okay. Well, then you have some options.
Let me see that.
So you have some options, right? So this is the easement deed that they had filed.
Let me make something very clear, officer. Okay? You can file anything.
Okay.
It doesn't mean
and like I
it's
said,
legal.
you can look it up. But what I'm saying is I have nothing criminal to investigate at this point because the evidence I have is they own an easement for 36 feet from your arc. Okay, and that's where it's all outlined here. Let me show you.
Sir, I'm not
I just want to show
you.
you.
Read it.
I'll just show you the easement. Like I said, you can take a picture. You can go down to the clerks and recorder's office. And my interpretation and my limited knowledge of these is there's a 36-foot radius back from here. That is the easement, which would be right where that sign is.
They made this up. They just did this document.
Okay, and if you believe that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you can go down. And you can go get copies of it down at the assessor's office.
Give it to my attorney.
Okay.
I'll just take pictures.
Okay.
So this document was just made up.
Okay. And if you believe that, that's fine. And you can go through the civil court process to sort that out. But the evidence we have is that they own 36 feet, 36-foot easement where that sign is.
This is not legal. This is fraud.
Now that we have all had an opportunity to look at the video of the sheriff deputy arriving at this homeowner's property and taking a position not only on a portion of her land and who owned it, and he sided with the HOA, making analysis associated with the easement deed. He also, what is interesting to me, went so far as to take a formal position on the matter associated with property rights. I had a personal experience where I have been involved in this legal battle, as I've mentioned, with my HOA for 10 years. And I felt and believed like the HOA was trespassing on my private property. And at the time, I engaged the local police department to assist me. Went to the police department with my plats, with all my information, and said, please help me stop the HOA from trespassing on my property. The police at that time informed me that while they can help me and assist both myself and the HOA with maintaining the peace, making sure that there are no disturbances, that they needed to be very careful about taking one side or another when it came to property disputes. Because if they took a side, one side or the other, and they were inaccurate in their analysis, what was communicated to me is that they have a high degree of risk and liability, and that they needed to involve their lawyer, the police department's lawyer, before they could take any further action associated with taking a stand around any trespass claims. I was told it was a civil issue because it involved an HOA, and I would have to take the matter through court. I find it very alarming that the sheriff deputy in Grand Junction didn't take the same position, but rather he took a position in which it seems, based on the video, that he took the position of the HOA Management Company and the HOA owning the property in question. So what occurred, I want to go into the next event. What occurred after July 8th was, after the fencing had been ripped down, the homeowner tried to put it back up, it was ripped down again. The homeowner contacted a storage company and an owner of a company in Grand Junction and purchased a storage unit. If you look in the screen, you can see a picture of the storage container sitting on her property. And on the very day she had the storage container delivered to her property, the HOA Management Company sent an email to the storage company owner and stated the following: your container is now sitting on private property owned by the association. It goes on to say that if the storage owner does not move the container, the board is considering taking your business to court as a named co-conspirator of the homeowner. They then go so far as to make a claim that the homeowner is lying to you, and if you choose to believe her lies, there will be ramifications. The board has also notified the sheriff deputy for special investigator of Mesa County, and he will be contacting you shortly. This is your final warning to remove the container, as it is not located anywhere near the front of the sign. It needs to be removed. Then this management company goes on to say, finally, we are a much better ally to you than the homeowner. And goes on and says how she hasn't paid her vendors and she's trouble, and then they would love to have a fruitful relationship with your company here and into the future. And after Wednesday, you will not be hearing from me again on this issue. The board and their attorney will get involved, and they will be pursuing this to the fullest extent that the law allows. So, the HOA Management Company takes it upon themselves to reach out to a private company owner who had nothing to do. The homeowner had purchased the storage unit. So they're now threatening this company owner because he delivers a storage container, so this homeowner can try to protect the fencing. And that was on July 18th. Then what occurs the very next day is animal control was called anonymously with an animal abuse claim. Because of the ability to subpoena and the process of the court procedures, it actually came out that a neighbor and HOA board member was the one that made that call. I have the animal control report that was filed that I'll be reading in part 3 of this segment. Then a week later, roughly a week later, Adult Protective Services was called with claims of this homeowner acting crazy, living in feces, yelling, essentially acting like a person who is mentally ill, and frightening, quite honestly, based on the way these claims read. And so these events follow immediately after this email, and then come towards the fall. This homeowner put up a gay pride flag on her property, moved it to the front of the property out of respect for the Colorado shooting victims. And within days of that flag being put up, the flag was vandalized. And there is a video of somebody riding up to her property on an electric bike disguised that we will be sharing in part 3. So, as well as events that occur going into 2023. So, with that being said, that was a lot to digest, a lot of more really insane things to come. So we will go ahead and wrap this up. Again, please like and follow. This is a really critical story that needs to get out there, and people need to be aware what's going on with this particular story of this homeowner. So like and follow, and I look forward to bringing you more details and information associated with this homeowner story. All right, thank you. Okay, folks, I thought I was done with sharing part 2 of this homeowner's story. However, I ended up staying up last night till 3 o'clock in the morning doing additional research, mapping things to the timeline, and I wanted to follow up and close out part 2 with the rest of the details that I uncovered here. I think it's going to bring to light a different view on potentially what may have occurred here. Okay, so on the timeline, I noted this really significant event associated with May 20th, 2022, when an easement deed was recorded against this homeowner's property. However, 2.5 months prior, the homeowner had retained an attorney that sent a cease and desist letter to her neighbor and HOA board director that basically said, hey, it's come to our attention that you are continually trespassing on this homeowner's property. And while there was this easement agreement that was put in place in 2006, it was for lot owner B specifically, Bob, and it did not grant you, HOA board member and homeowner, the permission to use this easement. And it certainly didn't grant the permission to use this easement to the newly formed HOA. So cease and desist, this is trespassing. So now this board member obviously has a problem that's presented to them. And so then magically 2.5 months later, this easement deed appears and is recorded that grants and transfers ownership of this homeowner's property to this newly formed HOA. Keep in mind that ownership is transferred to this newly formed HOA, which through the court process and documentation shows that these board members and neighbors called Social Security with disability fraud claims, animal control with animal abuse claims, adult protective services, attempted to file a restraining order, has called the police on her over 30 times, has called the building department associated with building violation claims, building code violation claims, all of which have been dismissed as baseless. Read these reports of what is in these reports and the claims against this homeowner. It's pretty disturbing. So essentially what happens, this easement deed magically appears. The HOA management company takes this easement deed, within 2 weeks shows up at the homeowner property, rips out the fence, followed up with the sheriff deputy the same day supporting the HOA management company. The homeowner then goes to file an insurance claim on the damage to the fence, finds out that that newly formed HOA actually went so far as to get an insurance policy against this land, her land, that was granted to them. Her claim's denied. The HOA management company then sends an email to an owner of a storage company because the homeowner goes and gets this storage container and not only tells the owner of this company, the sheriff deputy is calling you, but they reference the surveyor of Mesa County basically backing their position that the HOA owns the property, which leads to the surveyor then providing a letter that he sends to the newly formed HOA that essentially states, quote unquote, per the Mesa County records, this homeowner is, quote unquote, the sole owner of Lot A. All this behavior continues. Everybody looks the other way, right? No, this easement deed, the HOA owns it, blah, blah, blah. All these events then continue. She has vandalism of a pride flag that she put at the front of her property for the victims in Colorado Springs. And then going into 2023, she gets notice from a Colorado banking institution that she needs to close her bank account. Reaches out to the bank, the president calls her and says, I've talked to the HOA attorney, and as a result, you have 30 days to close your bank account. This is the president of this region up there, and informs her, talk to the HOA attorney. Oh, who, by the way, is also on the planning commission for the Grand Junction County. Okay, folks. In terms of the research that I did, I'm dismayed about this May 20th, 2022 easement deed. I did some research. There is what's called quiet claim deed fraud. Now, this doesn't fit in there because it's an easement deed. However, what it means is when an individual claims that they own your property as the grantor, when they really don't, and they sell it to a grantee, and then they file a document and record it against your property, that's considered fraud. Now, did that happen here? I'm not making that claim. I'm just saying these events are I can't wrap my head around it. It's very alarming. I guess the question is, when do we get to a point where folks are like, you know what, there's enough there to have an investigation? And when do these civil issues with HOAs move into something else where a government agency or folks that want to investigate step in? I don't know that answer to that question, but I'm gonna end this here. Following up part 3 of the story with the video of the vandalism that occurred, as well as when the HOA insurance company steps in, the homeowner insurance company steps in and assigns her an HOA lawyer to defend her against the HOA. Unbelievable story still to come. It just doesn't stop. So we'll leave it at that. Please like and follow. We need to get this story out around this homeowner, and I look forward to bringing you more information on this critical homeowner story. Thank you.